Hello, everyone. Is everybody already in? Should we start? Hi. Okay, it's already 2 p.m. So welcome everybody to this webinar on fast fashion, where we're going to try and understand a little bit better how the system works. Because I'm sure everybody who's going into fashion or who's studying fashion nowadays is convinced that it's not the best system and we need to change it. But I wonder how many people understand the industrial and cultural revolution that fast fashion once started. I think it's very important that we really understand how things work if you want to change them. So before we start that, I want to just briefly introduce myself, give you guys a little bit of a background, and I will ask you to leave your microphones in mute, and you can also take the video out or leave it in. But if you take it out, I can see your name, and if you interact with me and ask me questions, then I know who am I interacting with. So my name is Adela Alonso, and I'm originally from Spain. I studied fashion design like most of you, and I did a master's in trend research, or cool hunting, how we used to call it nowadays, back in the time, sorry. And then I worked in the fashion industry for over 12 years. I worked as a designer, I work in merchandising and production as a buyer. And as a buyer, I also moved to Dubai, and I worked for Landmark Group for 2.5 years after I decided to start my own company. And this is a strategic and branding, and most recently also sustainability consultancy, where I try to help designers and entrepreneurs and even bigger companies to find better solutions for the problems that they're having. Right, okay. I'm sorry, should we give people a few minutes to join, or should we just start? We'll start, okay. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now with you, and we're gonna go to a presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat, and we'll get back to them in the end. But please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. Let me see how can we make this work. I'm having a issue. Wait a second. I need a minute. Hi, sorry everyone. Okay, now we're in business. Let's start. Okay. starting with this quote, any fool can know, the point is to understand. I started doing sustainability content, videos and articles because it frustrates me how much content there is on sustainable fashion and fast fashion, but how shallow this content goes. Yes, it is very important that we have it is very important that we have awareness. It is very important that we put the word out there. But I think, especially for people who is truly interested in fashion, such as students and people who work in the industry or people who are very passionate about fashion, shocking statistics are not enough. We need to really understand how everything works so we can give proper solutions, right? This is just the way that we're going to look into it, and we're going to talk about how it all started, how it meant to democratize the style, how they changed the retail space, how it changed production, how it changed the way to promote, and then where do the problems started and how can we make it better from particularly a designer's point of view, because this is what's going to interest you guys the most. Okay, so the term fast fashion was firstly coined by the newspaper, the New York Times, in the early 1990s, which is when Zara, which you probably know it's a Spanish-born company, first entered the US market. In the newspaper, they were reporting the company's ambitions of reducing timelines up to 15 days. That is 15 days from the time that they make a design to the time that you're putting the product in the stores. So that you understand how ridiculously fast that meant, when I first started working, which was not that long ago, we're talking maybe 15 years ago, we used to work with 1 year in advance. So when we started working on our collections, it was the year before this was planned to launch. And this is still how designer houses work. This is still how your main couture and pret-a-porter labels work. But slowly, the culture has been moving faster and faster, and the obsession for immediacy has become so strong, and the trends are moving so fast that high street retailers are now finding new trends in Instagram and doing a small production extremely quick and having them to be sold online or in the stores in a few weeks. We even started talking a few years ago of ultra fast fashion, which was led mostly by online retailers as ASOS, where they had maybe the week after or in a margin of 10 days new styles available worldwide. And the thing I think we all know is that fast fashion, in the sense of having new trends in the store every few weeks or even every week, is nowadays the industry standard. It's something that we're used to. All high street retailers are working in this way. But what we need to understand is that when Zara and H&M, which we consider the pioneers of fast fashion, started working, this was not the case, right? Before fast fashion system started to work, we can say that we had fashion and we had clothing. So fashion was a luxury item that was available only for the highest tier of society. It was things that, it was more art than a consumer product, right? The designers will come with inspirations based on, of course, there's a certain, there is a certain element of cultural trends because that's global, but it's also based on their own experience and their own life. They will create these collections, and these collections will be shown in the catwalk or in their own workshop, and then will be sold in a boutique. The trends or the inspirations were seasonal, and it was mostly focused on leisure wear and event wear for ladies. It was very female focused. Menswear, it would be mostly suits and tailoring, but fashion up to the 1970s, 1980s, it was mostly female dominated. Now, what happened? And then clothing, because yes, that was fashion, right? But everybody had to wear clothes. So what most people will wear was based on practicality and durability. If you think about our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers, they probably had one winter coat that they will use for years, and maybe their daughters inherited this. So it was really an investment. And the better it was the more longer you could wear it. The trends still existed, but they were moving much more slowly, and it was based on the lifestyle that you're living. So, for example, the way the silhouette of female garment, maybe you guys are studying this already in your course, but just in case we have non-fashion student people in the chat, the way that the silhouette of a female garment looked pre-World War II and after World War II was very different, because women incorporated themselves into the working market. They started working, so they needed to be more comfortable. And we see how there's a very big difference between the 1930s and 1940s fashion and 1950s and 1960s. This clothing, also had to be affordable, because once again, everybody needs to wear clothes, right? And it was designed, I repeat, for our day-to-day life. It needed to suit your lifestyle. You should be able to go to work, to take care of your children, to take care of your house, because you didn't have the chances of have 50 different outfits in your wardrobe that you can play with. So what happened is that these pioneers of fast fashion realized that there was a desire on the general public to join to that fun and artistry and fantasy that fashion was offering. And for example, the founder of H&M, when he went to the US after World War II and he saw these big retailers realized how effective those stores were working, and they thought, okay, maybe we can do something like that. And this meant that they found what we call a blue ocean. We call a blue ocean when we come up with a product that has no competition, because it's opening a new entire market. So when these people thought, okay, I want to take clothing and keep it affordable so people can wear it, but I want to make it interesting and fun, they found that they had no competition. This is what we were talking about. They changed to be able to take that inspirations and that variety, still keeping clothes affordable though. They needed to completely turn the way fashion is designed and made and distributed completely on its head. So from the way that a dress was bought in the 1960s to the way a dress is bought today, there's almost nothing in common. Starting with the retail space. So if you picture a bridal boutique or a designer boutique with this very beautifully designed interior, with the decoration and these lovely expert ladies that are showing you different options, this is how fashion boutiques used to look like, all of them, right? They had a very limited stock outside. You would go and you would ask what you're looking for. I'm looking for a blouse, I'm looking for a trouser, and then they will look at you, they will ask you some questions, and they will give you the options, right? These boutiques will do their buy seasonally, once a season, spring, summer, and fall, winter, and they will keep that buy for the whole season. They will try to sell it for 6 months, and then whatever they couldn't sell, it will go on discount, right? And then this was an experience. People would go every, I don't know, a few months. Well, those who could afford it, of course, will go to the boutique, and everybody knew each other, and it was a personalized experience where the clothes were just part of the whole lifestyle. So one of the first things that Amancio Ortega, which is the founder of Zara, did was take all the stock outside of the backroom. The first stores, they were selling only shirts. Take all of the stock out of the backroom and put it in tables. All that was available, all of the sizes, and allow for customers to choose in between all the options, select their size, try it on, and then buy it. So there were several very important things that got accomplished because of this. Once they were able to make it easier for people to shop. If you think about, for example, if you have seen Pretty Woman, do you know the scene when she goes inside the store and everybody's looking to her and they don't want to serve this? When you go to a self-service model, everybody can enter, see what they like, and it's a much more democratic experience. At the same time, having all of the stock available gives visibility to all the products that you have and allows you to understand very quickly which things move and which things doesn't move, right? Remember this, we're talking about 1970s, 1980s, there is no sophisticated IT systems in the stores. There's only what the owner of the store can see and can judge. So having a limited stock that is available at inside, he was able to know which product is moving and which product doesn't move, and he was constantly adapting this offering to make sure that you're giving the customer what you want. This is what we call dynamic inventory. So think about this. While the designers were creating a collection based on their own inspiration, and then the fashion culture was putting their efforts into selling this inspiration to the customer and convincing you that this is what you want, these people were trying to understand what does the customer want and give it to them as fast as possible. So instead of a top-down approach, we have a bottom-up approach. Oops, sorry. Okay. Then second, or another fundamental concept that sustains fast fashion is the delocalization of production. Delocalization of production means that where your products are being made is not where you are. Pretty self-explanatory, right? But think about it. Back in the day, and still many designer labels work like this. If you have a designer label, you have your own atelier and you are making every single piece in your atelier. If you're working locally as well, you need to work with materials that you can find in your region. Now, this is in itself, and I'm sure if you're trying to make garments in your course, very limiting. You can only find a certain number of fabrics. You can only do a certain level of finishing and washing, etc. So by moving the production or having different production hubs in different countries, the first thing they achieve is a chance of variety. You can compete with everybody basically, because you can be buying denim from a factory that is specialized in denim. You can buy knitwear from a factory that's specialized in knitwear, and you can buy underwear from a factory that is specialized in nightwear, underwear. And all of these products require different machines for sewing, they require different machines for washing and for finishing. So it will be really almost impossible for you to do it all, for you to have a store, how a Zara store is today, or an H&M is today, if you only had one small atelier in your hometown. Just impossible. You basically need to employ the whole city and have them work for you. And the second thing you accomplish, of course, is by moving the production to a place where labor and materials have a lower cost, you are able to replicate what designers are doing at a much, much cheaper price. In fact, when Zara started to be a more fashionable brand, they will just fusilate whatever was done on the catwalk. Now they have a huge team of designers and they still get inspiration for catwalks, but they do their own collections as well. But when it started, it was really outrageous. It was just copy-paste. And they say, the legend has it that when the first Zara store was about to open in Milan, Giorgio Armani requested to have a private viewing on the store before opening. And he went crazy. He couldn't understand. He just couldn't understand how Zara was able to do these garments in this quality for that price. Now, it gets even more complicated / genius. Now, the way companies such as Zara work, they have different production networks, and they have what we could call like a two-step production network. So Zara is based in Arteixo, which is a small town in the northwest of Spain, and their whole team, not the whole team, but the design team, the buying team is there. Let's say that you want to launch a new silhouette or a new product line, and you still have no data, you don't know how is it going to work. And you have more than 1,000 stores all over the world. So if you were to do a production for all your stores of this new fit that you don't know if the customer is ready for, it will be too risky of an investment. So what they do, they design this and they make the pattern, and they send it both to the factories in Far East and to their closed network of factories, which are in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, Turkey, so Europe. And first, they do a smaller production in these closer factories. They put it on what they call test stores. Test stores are stores that they have observed tend to replicate the overall acceptance of the customer to one particular trend. So let's say that I want to do a new fit of denim that has never tried on before. I will produce my denim, probably in Turkey, and then send it to total of 15 stores in Western Europe, for example. I compare how this denim fit is working, is rotating against my other fashion denim fits, and with this I'm able to calculate how much units would I need for my global operations. Then I send the order to Bangladesh or Pakistan or China, and then I'm able to service all of the world with this new denim fit in more or less the volume that it's needed. And this way I can also reduce overstock, which is really important. Something that is pretty amazing about how Zara operates is that still to this day, they're one of the companies that still have lesser amount of overstock after sales. It's above 90%. And this is extremely, extremely good, because I'm sure you have seen on all of the content that is created about the dangers of fast fashion, one of the problems is overstock. All of the pieces that go unsold when collections rotate so fast and then have to be discarded and create like a very big environmental issue. Now, with dynamic inventory and with this kind of reactive business model, you are able to reduce this a lot. Sorry. Then we have the way that the product is promoted. Now, if you think about how do you enter in contact with brands like Chanel and Gucci, you have seen them on catwalks in TV, you have seen them on fashion magazines, you have seen supermodels wearing these garments, and you have come to relate this name with a certain idea, a very aspirational idea of status, of femininity, of power, of beauty. And this is what you want to acquire when you buy a fashion product, a traditional fashion product. Now, something that a lot of people don't know is most high-end fashion brands do not make their profits by selling clothes. Those clothes are very expensive, you guys. Almost nobody can afford them. They make most of the money by selling lipstick and blush and perfumes and maybe a handbag if you happen to have a bonus and you're so happy and you want to reward yourself with a handbag. Because we have this image, this aspirational image that we want to feel, and that makes us pay $60 for a lipstick instead of $5 because it's Chanel. On the other hand, another thing that Zara did since the beginning is focus on selling. We were saying before, they want to sell what the customer wants. They want to make sure to have what the customer wants and sell it to them. So all that effort that traditional fashion is putting into creating that image of aspiration, they are putting to improving the retail store to make it so easy, so fast, so convenient to shop that it's almost impossible to walk into a fast fashion store and walk out not buying anything. They took learnings that we were saying before from bigger surfaces like Walmart and Targets in the US, and they put this on the fashion retail store as well. For example, next to the cashier, you're always going to find small boxes with random things that you can just grab in the last minute. Same way that you have razors and chocolates in the supermarket, you're going to have small lip balms and perfumes in the fashion store. So since the beginning, they started investing in visual merchandising, in in-store promotion, and send away things like fashion magazines. Zara does not do fashion magazine spreads. They don't do catwalk up to this day. They did trials a couple of times of TV advertisements, like TV spots, but they don't do it anymore because they realize they don't need that. People know them, they know where to find them, and they don't need to invest in that. So, but since the beginning, they have always worked with the best of the best in terms of in-store architecture, in terms of the lights that they put on their store, in terms of the mannequins that they have on the windows. They've always worked with the best of the best. Because they took this very seriously, but they don't want to give that image of aspiration. This is targeted to the general public, and they want that to be very clear. Now, I realize that Zara now, in many countries, is seen as an aspirational brand. But this is quite recent. When it started, it was very, very democratic. Now Inditex has so many brands, and they have kept Zara as the more aspirational and fashionable, but you have Pull&Bear, Stradivarius, Lefties, and Bershka, for example, which are all from the same group. They're from the same mother company, and they're much more accessible in terms of pricing and in terms of branding as well. Okay, so I think if you enter this talk thinking of fast fashion as the biggest evil in the 21st century, now probably you're thinking that all of these things doesn't look that bad. They kind of look like good ideas. So now what is the problem? How did we go from making fashion accessible and democratizing it and making it more useful to the environmental disaster that we're in right now? So the first thing is the competition. Like a few minutes ago, we were talking about blue oceans. We were talking about finding an unexplored niche. The thing is, oceans don't stay blue for a long time. As soon as somebody has a good idea and starts making money, a lot of people is going to come and they're going to try to replicate this business model. And within a few decades, from 2 or 5 people working on a fast fashion model, you have hundreds and thousands of companies that are trying to do the same thing. The more people are competing, the more complicated the goalpost gets. So all of these companies started a ridiculous race to try and do things faster and faster and trying to keep prices lower and lower to a point where it's not sustainable from any perspective. This is something that I want to express really strongly, because when we talk about sustainability, we immediately relate it with environmental sustainability. But the business model that we have at the moment, oh, sorry guys, that's my laptop. Business model that we have at the moment is not sustainable from a financial point of view either, from a company, from a business perspective point either. There is not enough consumers for the amount of stuff that we are producing. That's just plain and simple. So this level of competition and this level of fast fashion, ultra fast fashion, it's not sustainable in any way possible. Now, we have the companies competing against each other and trying to best and one-up one another, and then we have the other side, which is the consumer that, since especially millennials and Gen Z, who probably don't even remember how buying clothes used to work like, we've gotten so used to buying so easily and so cheaply that we take this for granted. We see, in it's a little bit more different, I think, but in Europe, we see a pair of jeans that cost 60 euros and we think this is expensive. If we knew how much fabric costs, how much processes, how much steps does it take to make a nice pair of jeans, we will not understand how can we buy this for less than 200. It is very easy to get used to good things. It is, and I'm sure that now that most of us have to stay at home and we cannot go out and we cannot go running, we cannot meet up with our friends, have realized how much we miss the simple things. We get used to that very, very quickly. The same happens with consuming fashion. We wait for promotions to buy the things that we want. We want to buy a 50% discount. We want to buy a 60% discount. We also want people to have fair wages and we want to save the planet. But we need to understand that both of these desires might be mutually exclusive and we need to find a balance. We need to be able to see clothing again as some sort of an investment and reduce the frequency on which we buy and reduce impulse buy a lot. We no longer, it is like going to the cinema at this point. We go to the mall and we go shopping and just to buy a little thing because it's part of the activity that you're doing, not because you need that. And we are completely unaware that behind this gesture of buying something, there is materials that needs to be sourced, there is fabrics that need to be dyed and then cut, and someone has to sew it, and then someone has to wash it and pack it and send it from the other side of the world and then put it on the shelf and then give it to you. That's a lot of effort, there's a lot of resources going into that, and we are completely unaware of that. And then, of course, while making fashion more accessible, which is fundamentally good, this means that if in the 50s, in the whole world, there were under, I don't know, 100,000 people that could maybe afford to consume fashion. Nowadays, we have maybe a couple billion of people who have access to consume fashion in the playful way that we do. The more people have access to this, the more we multiply all of the impact that producing and distributing and selling fashion has. And the more people are becoming desensitized with the consuming process, and the more companies are going to want to make money out of it and compete with each other. So now, what can we do, right? This is the big question. The problem is more complicated and deeper than a lot of people want to acknowledge. There is very important points of improvement in the whole life cycle of the product. Life cycle of the product as we see it now. From design to sourcing to manufacturing, distribution, logistics, the shopping, the consuming, and the discarding. Not going to go into all of it because it will take you 6 or 7 hours. But the important thing to know is that it is complicated and it needs to be done. What this means, or the thing that we need to fight for, is improving things. Especially for you guys who are studying fashion and you want to work in fashion. We still want fashion to be there, I am assuming. And we do not want fashion to go back to being privileged that only the 1% can enjoy. I think we need to keep all of the good things that these guys have worked for, like democratization of fashion and making the retail space easier to buy and all of these things, and make it even better, because now we know the consequences that it has to the environment and the negative consequences that it can have to certain communities, and we need to make it better. But we need to make it better a little bit at a time, and every step is a good step. I want you to really get this in your head, because I see, unfortunately, in fashion sustainability forums, I don't know if you've noticed, but there is like a lot of criticizing in between different advocates for sustainability. So there is people who believe that something cannot be sustainable or cannot have a sustainable edge if it comes from animal products, or some people are absolutely 100% against artificial fibers, which I'm not saying no to any of those things. I'm saying that everything that we change has consequences and has a ripple effect. And there is no 100% sustainability when it comes to fashion. We are not going to be able to have a zero impact fashion model. As long as we're living and we're consuming and we're creating things and we're putting new things out there in the world, we're having an impact. And this is something that we need to live with. But you can have a small impact, and you can have a really, 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 really horrible impact. So when you are trying to design sustainability, or you're trying to consume in a more sustainable way, it's very important that you don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So when you start a collection and maybe you want to source locally and you put your goal in sourcing locally, maybe you're not going to find organic dyes with the color fastness that you want locally. And that's fine, because you need to start somewhere. And as a consumer, it's the same. If you have ever tried to live plastic-free, I'm sure you were depressed on day number 3, because there's plastic everywhere. But you can still do small things. You can bring your own water bottle. You can bring your own bag to the supermarket. And that is fantastic. I don't think we need to aim to be perfect, but we all should aim to do better. Okay, I want to go really quickly into key sustainability aspects of design, because you guys are future designers or designers, and this is probably the most important for you. And then things that you can focus on without going crazy about it. So one thing that is very important that we slowly change is the speed on which the trends fast. Nowadays, we have trends that are lasting a few weeks, because there's a couple of influencers that are wearing something absolutely ridiculous in Instagram, and then everybody wants to wear it, and then you have 25 different brands that have this thing for sale within a few weeks, and then people want to buy it, they want to take a picture for Instagram, and then they never wear it again because it's, again, very ridiculous and uncomfortable and doesn't serve your life whatsoever. Instead of trying to chase every trend, it is better to focus on style, on timeless style, collections that can be relevant for a longer time, because they're flattering, because they're comfortable, because they're nice to wear. Another very big problem that we have is the high rotation, which is how often brands and designers want to have new stuff on the store, which is not exactly the same as trends, because maybe it's just, I remember when I joined Max in Dubai, one of the things that was more ridiculous to me is we were changing the colors of the basics every single season. To make it even more fun, we always had a navy, but we will change the color of the navy every season. Why? No reason for this. No reason whatsoever. You need to, we need collectively, from bigger brands to designers to emerging designers, limit your options and limit the collections. And make sure that you keep the stock of what people like. Because how many times, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but whenever I like something very much and I want it again, or I want another color of the same thing, it's never again in the store. And I'm sure there's a lot of people the same. Something also that I started doing more and more when I came to Dubai was repeating styles. I have if normally, let's say you have a 20% sell-through in your top stores within the first week, and a particular style has 65% sell-through within the first week in your top stores, this means people like this, so you can sell more. So when you're doing this, when you're thinking about your collections, if you launch something that you can see people really, really like, why not do it again? A nice dress is a nice dress. I had this thing for 8 years. I wear it every week. It's fine. There's no need to keep reinventing the wheel. The wheel works well, just as it is. Another thing we should start working against is ultra-specific designs. Now, when we get used and we have a beautiful, huge wardrobe, probably you have several pieces that could all be used in the same, sorry, let me say that again. Let's say, for example, as a girl, I have several cocktail dresses, and I will wear one cocktail dress for a first date, and I wear a different cocktail dress for an after-work party, and I wear a different cocktail dress for my birthday, because it's my birthday, it's very special. But truly, that's not necessary. I could have just one. The fashion brands are trying to sell us the need for really, really ultra-specific designs, when they should actually try to be more creative and think better and give us things that we can use in all of the aspects of our life. Now, I made this particular thing for another talk that I gave in Dubai a few months ago. I actually think a silver liner or COVID-19 is going to be this. We are living our life inside, so we're kind of using the same outfits to connect with work that we will use to stay home. I think we're going to see a trend towards more comfortable and more versatile outfits and clothing in the after COVID-19 world. But I don't know how long this is going to last, because that's the thing. Once things get better, we get used very quickly. So maybe in the moment that in 10 years, maybe we might have forgotten about this and we might go back to the same thing. Let's try to make sure this doesn't happen. And this is going to be up to you guys. This is going to be up to the new generation of fashion professionals to not forget the good things that we're learning out of this weird situation. And then another thing, and you might hate me for this, is art over engineer. So I know because I did fashion design myself, and when I was designing, I used to hate my buyers for limiting me. Design is also a form of art. It does come from your creativity. You do pour your heart and soul into it. So you can tend to forget that this beautiful thing that you're drawing in your laptop or in a piece of paper actually has to be produced out of real materials, and it has to be worn by an actual person that is going to have to move and sit, maybe even go to the bathroom once in a while. And we can get so involved in the creative process that we forget about that. I don't know if it has ever happened to you that you buy a beautiful shirt or a blouse with a nice constructed shoulder or a nice sleeve, and you cannot put a jacket on top of that. You cannot wear a bag on top of the constructed shoulder. Now, if we make a product that doesn't fit people's lifestyle, they're not going to wear it as much, which makes it less sustainable, because it's an effort that it's not going to be used. Now, you might think that this limits your creativity, but I'm going to try to convince you that this is the opposite. You need to be even more creative to be able to come up with styles that are beautiful, that are flattering, that are comfortable, and are suited to people's lifestyle. You can also consolidate materials. When you were thinking about your collections, if you manage to make a beautiful 30-piece collections using only 3 kinds of materials, this is much better. Your the production waste is going to be much smaller, and then things like distribution costs, like there's a lot of small add-ons to the carbon footprint of a garment, and when you consolidate materials, you're really reducing it. So just by the time that you sit with your inspiration board or your trend report and you start turning that inspiration into a collection, you have a huge, huge, huge impact on how sustainable this is going to be, on how much of an impact, negative or positive, this collection is going to have on the environment. You can also aim from zero waste. Zero waste is very complicated. I'm going to tell you now, if this is your goal, is to create a zero waste brand, you're going to be very limited in terms of design. It's really good, and some people are doing this. It's complicated. If you want to reduce your production waste and you want to have a lesser impact, I will recommend starting from there. And then if you want to go one step forward, you look for dead stock fabrics. Dead stock fabrics are the last few yards of a roll of fabric, or the leftover yards from somebody else's collection that they didn't need, that factories also need to get rid of. And they normally sell it for a much reduced price. So again, it's going to be a little bit limiting. Maybe you're not going to find exactly the fabric texture that you wanted, or exactly the color, the shade that you had in your mind or in your vision board, but you're going to reduce your impact and you're probably going to be much more cost effective as well. So those are some things that you can start doing. Okay. Now, in a minute, I'm going to open, I think I spoke too fast, but there's more time for questions there. I'm going to open the floor for questions, but these are the key takeaways that I would want you to take with you today. First, let's not forget what we learned from fast fashion. This was a cultural revolution as well. Think about it. How many people probably didn't go and buy a fashion piece just because they were embarrassed or they thought they were going to be judged from walking on a boutique? Fashion should be a privilege, and everyone should be able to express themselves through the way they dress. I think choice is also a good thing to maintain. Style should come from the people and should fit everybody's everyday lives. But then, what we need to achieve, rather than tearing down the system, that will be super dangerous. We need to improve it so it fits what we want and what we need. We need to build more conscious, responsible, and healthy fashion culture. And that is it. Actually, I consumed most of my hour. I'm sorry about that, but we can do as many questions as you want. Will not leave you. I will not leave you hanging. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Okay, and then we can start. There's no questions so far.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Adela, for being on board with us, and also the participants for attending the webinar. It's about fashion, and I would just like to share a thought. For me, fashion is not just like, people don't do fashion, but they are fashion themselves, basically, as I see it. Like, everyone makes a statement by themselves. Be it brand or be it like, how much we depend upon having an identity like Louis Vuitton, Gucci. But I feel like even if you wear a scarf or a shawl and you drape it down and you make a statement of your own, With the today's presentation of Miss Adela, we learned something which is very interesting when it comes to the delocalization, and something that really connects me down, because when it comes to Zara, as you explained well, the so-called Zara, from Spain again, it so happens that, like, okay, I got a dress and it's from Zara, but when I look the tag where it's been manufactured, okay, it's from Bangladesh or from India, you see. So how delocalization has happened, like, I mean, the world has shrunk, and how the retail industry and the productionists are looking into low labor cost and strategizing themselves, I can say. So networking definitely is very vital, and as you said rightly, the blue ocean concept with delocalization has given us a lot of insight to understand what's happening in the industry in actual today. So with this thought, I would like all the participants to brainstorm, the questions, or ask Miss Adela right face to face, whatever you feel like. She's right here on the forum.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, Rejoice. No questions. This is awkward, isn't it? Okay. Okay. Why sustainability became such a big deal suddenly? I think this is a complicated question, but there's a few key points to this. On one hand, we have a lot more visibility of what's happening, or there is a lot of there is visibility for those who want to know, right? And the new generation, the one that has been born into the internet, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, are way more conscious than us or the previous ones. They have born connected to everybody in the world, and they care much more about everybody in the world because their community is the global community. So there is an increased sensibilization to environmental issues, but also social issues and racial issues and all kind of global things. Like in the 1930s, people in I don't know, people in the Netherlands maybe didn't care of what was happening in Sumatra, but they also have no way of knowing. So there is certainly a component of that. And then we are starting to see the consequences on a way that they are no longer, you cannot look the other side anymore. Things like air pollution and things like the landfills, how they're getting things, the plastic showing up in the ocean. It's come to a point where you cannot ignore it even if you want. And then there was a pivotal moment when the Rana Plaza catastrophe. There was a building in Bangladesh that collapsed on itself, and more than 1,000 people passed in this accident. This was, I think, 2009, 2011. I'm very bad remembering numbers, but when this happened, I was already working as a designer, and there were a lot of businesses in Rana Plaza, and a few of those were fashion factories, and there were fashion factories who worked for multinational labels. This made all the international news, and people started to be aware what was happening, or some of the things that happened with the localization of production, because when you cannot see who's knitting your clothes, then you have a lot less control. I do want to say though, because not a lot of people know this, at least one of the factories in Rana Plaza was BCSI certified. It had a certification of social compliance. So it's very well possible that the buyer that we're buying from there, it's they thought that the workers are working in safe conditions because they have the certification. And I'm not saying this to defend anyone, but rather to help you understand how complicated it is and the many ramifications that doing something remotely can have. So yeah, I think it's a mix of things. It's mostly cultural, I want to believe, because if it's cultural, it will have a longer impact in time. But definitely Rana Plaza was a pivotal moment as well. And a lot of companies started a 10-year plan and a 20-year plan towards a more sustainable and socially conscious way of working. If you want to look into H&M and CNA foundations, the long-term programs that they have, which I think is very important. If you want to know which brand actually cares and which brand is greenwashing, go and research the long-term programs. Because you cannot change something as big as this in 6 months. If they just launch a sustainable collection and they don't have a long-term program, that's 100% greenwashing. I'm gonna go in another question. I have produced a particular design over and over again, though most of my clients love the design and it has been a good sale for me. I just feel I should stop so it doesn't become mass production. Okay, mass production doesn't really refer on how much you make all over the time. It refers at how much you make at once. So if you think about, I don't know, imagine that you were making socks and you're making black socks for people to wear with the work shoes, and you can be making, if it's a good quality sock, you can make it that for 30 years. It's still valid, it's still fine. This doesn't mean that it's your collection, it's your product. If you're bored of making the style and you don't want to do it again, then you are in your perfect right to stop doing that. Or you can find ways of improving it somehow. Maybe you can find, I don't know, a nicer material, or you can modify a little bit the shape. Every product will need to be adjusted over the time because trends have a cultural basis and culture changes. So taste changes with culture. So I don't know if this answers your question. I don't think this is mass production. That's not mass production, but if you don't want to do it, then stop doing it. And if 2 seasons after people are still asking for it, then maybe do a limited edition with a little bit of changes. That's fine. But Salvatore Ferragamo has been doing the same model or the same shape of ballerinas since before World War II. And people still love them. Think about the Birkin bag, for example, which is, you know, like it's a staple right now. Okay. How fashion impact the society? So this is, again, it's a complicated question because it depends on what you mean with fashion. So the way we dress, if we talk about fashion as the way we dress, I don't think it impacts society because I think it's a reflection of society. And it's a reflection of humans' ambitions and it's rather human nature and culture that it's affecting society and shaping society. This being said, certain brands can be very powerful because when you, through years and years, you have developed an image of prestige and reputation, and you kind of become a tastemaker. The way you communicate something can make people feel a certain way. If you look at the reflection, how beauty is portrayed, for example, in marketing and communications, it can definitely impact the society, or rather than society, can impact individuals in a very strong way. Maybe that's the best way to put it. I don't think fashion impacts society. I think fashion is a reflection of society. But that reflection of society can deeply impact individuals. In a positive way, it can be very empowering, or in a negative way, it can be very damaging as well. Sorry. Will there be a change in the industry's dependence on synthetic fabrics from China? You mean because of COVID-19, Neha? Or because of the sustainability movement? I'm just going to answer both options. There is a belief that that companies are going to start sourcing less from China because there is like an anti-Chinese movement after COVID-19. In fact, for example, I'm in Vietnam at the moment. The Vietnam government has considered this into a factor when calculated their estimated growth for 2020. They are seeing a movement from China to other markets. But China is a very big market, not only for synthetic fabrics. China is the first leather goods distributor of the world as well, and knitwear and all kinds of things. So if you're okay, because of COVID, there is a chance. However, I have spoken to one of my former suppliers, who's now a very good friend of mine, and they said they didn't see that much of an impact at the moment. So it's too soon. It's too soon to tell. We need to understand something. When something this big and this global happens, it has a lot of consequences it's really hard for us to predict. But for example, I also assuming there's going to be an increase of the sales of activewear, because we are more aware about our health. This is going to confront us with our own mortality, unfortunately. And a lot of people who haven't picked up a dumbbell in their life are going to start working out. So I think it could go either way. Maybe from China, but I don't think COVID is going to affect. It might actually increase the consumption of artificial fibers. Another thing, but I don't want to get into that. I will link in the here when we finish if you want, or you can email me. I have a video about sustainability in sourcing, which is like all about that. Artificial materials, I think it's going to be reduced if we're talking about sustainability, because I think everything is going to be reduced and there's going to be a more conscious consumerism, and we're going to consume less. I don't think they will stop being consumed. I hope they will be consumed just when they're useful. For example, if you need something to be waterproof, you're gonna need an artificial material. That's just what it is. But you do not need to have polyester in your socks or in your pajamas. So hopefully it will reduce, but it's not going to be eliminated, because there's very good material, artificial fibers, that we probably still need. You do not want to send your firefighters to a fire covered in cotton, for example. That would be very irresponsible. Sorry. How can we make sustainable fashion more affordable for the majority of consumers? Easy, you need to consume less. If you buy 3 pieces a year instead of 35, you can afford it. That's the easiest way of doing it. That's not the answer that we want. I understand this, but that is the most realistic way of doing it. Because again, if you are designing, then you know how much fabric works, how much fabric costs. and if you want to give people fair wages, then you need to take that into account. We need to be okay with shopping less often. We need to be okay with waiting for the things that we want. Because obviously truck delivery is less impactful than a plane, or a boat is less impactful than a plane. So to make fashion sustainable, as consumers, we need to be okay with shopping less and with waiting for what we want. And companies need to be okay with establishing a ceiling of growth. This means we need to let go of the ambition of every year we need to sell more, which is something really complicated to understand. Better doesn't mean more. This is also something that throughout my corporate career, I have, I think it's one of the main frustration that led me to abandon the corporate environment. I do not think less has to mean more. I have actually brought, both in Europe and in Dubai, higher profits to my collection with lesser buy and a lesser stock, making more profit by selling less. Just having a product that people like, they want to buy and they're not going to wait for sales to buy it. So those are the two keys. And then I know it's not what people want to hear. It's not what companies want to hear. It's not what consumer wants to hear, but that's the truth from my point of view. Okay, next question. There are different sizes chart, correct? This is a very good question, and it is really difficult to answer. So when I was working for Max, and we were thinking about styles for 9 different countries. So it's just not only UAE. It was UAE, it was KSA, it was North of Africa, I had Egypt, and then Malaysia, and then, so it made it even more complicated than what you're describing. So, I feel you. There is some things that you can do. Now, even if there's a lot of people in UAE, the odds are that your product is not going to be interest them at the same level. From a cultural point of view and from an economical point of view, you probably can limit the demographic. It's not going to be a perfect system, but locals and Asian collectives in UAE, the general rule, have different spending habits, have different preference in terms of style. I had to adapt my style when I joined, because of course I came from a very European perspective, and for example, from Europe to UAE, there's a lot more, I was buying menswear, so there's a lot of more color, there's a lot of more prints, there's a lot of more playfulness. So you could probably think about that, which demographic is more likely to take a liking on your collection and base that sizing. However, the smartest thing to do will be to try and think of styles that are more flexible in terms of sizing. So, for example, if you do a dress that is an A-line, it can fit a wider number of sizes than a dress that is a pencil skirt. If you have an elastic waistband, it can fit larger sizes than if you have a fixed width waistband. Again, that's not what the designer wants to hear, but that's the easiest way to do it. Yes, how people will spend in fashion in the short term and in the midterm, 100%. In the short term, people are scared of spending one penny. So it's going to be a tough year for fashion companies. There is also not events. There's no weddings, there is no concerts, there is no graduation parties. So a lot of products are just, we have no need for. As I said, I'm in Vietnam, I'm in Hoi An. Hoi An is the city of tailors, and when I arrived here, I have like a list of things I want to get done and I want to get tailored. To do certain, like this year I had a long list of events and public speaking engagements that I wanted to do. So I wanted to have like a few very combinable pieces that I wanted to get made in a linen silk blend. And now I'm not going to have that done because what's the point? I'd rather not do that, not do that effort, and then don't do that. The carbon impact is reduced. So people are going to buy more sweatpants and they're buying to buy less beautiful dresses. In the midterm, I think there is also going to be a change, because I think, again, generationally, most millennials and Gen Z have lived in a very comfortable position. So we work to live and we don't live to work, you know, the kind of YOLO mentality. You live paycheck by paycheck because that was fine, right? But now we're realizing how important it is to have a savings account, how important it is to have health insurance, how important it is to have a plan B if things go right, if things don't go right. So I think there's going to be a change in that as well. I think people are going to reduce the amount of disposable income that they actually dispose of. I think there's going to be an increase in saving mentality. And this is for sure going to affect fashion, because you're going to start seeing it more as an investment. You are less likely to shop something that you're not sure if you're going to use only once. I think this is going to happen, and I think it's going to be very good. Okay. What will the fashion world look like after COVID? I think we've answered most of it, but in the terms of the industry, how will the fashion industry remain relevant? So they need to adapt. We're going to see, again, I don't have a magic wand. This is what I believe based on my understanding of consuming behavior and consuming trends and how the industry works. I have no actual way of knowing this, but I think what's going to happen is that in this situation, a company can have a million approaches, but let's say 2 approaches. You can understand that the times are changing, and you can adapt your business model to reduce your spending and your impact and service the times, which can mean stop manufacturing something and do something else. You have Louis Vuitton making hospital gowns right now in the factories in France. So adapting to the times, there's companies who are going to do this, and there's companies who are going to want to stick to their guns and obsess with keeping the top line and the bottom line, and they're going to go into crazy discounts and things like this. And I don't think that's going to work. I think the companies who adapt and are able to envision what the consumer in 2021 is going to need and try to work towards giving the consumer that and do the necessary adjustments in their organizations are going to survive. And I think the companies that think they are better than history, they will not. And we're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of brands and designers, a lot, going bankrupt within the next 15 months. I think J. Crew just filed for bankruptcy, for example. Okay, true about the consumption, sorry. Therefore, cost of production will rise for the moment? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because the factories also need to pay their employees and need to keep their costs. I think the whole thing is going to reduce. The pie is going to get smaller. You know what I mean? It's not about you need a bigger piece of the pie or you need a larger piece of the pie. The pie is going to get smaller. There's less demand and there's going to be less offer. Yes, so Sanjay said it's true about the consumption increase in activewear with jeans closing. People are buying more gym equipment for home. Yeah. Why are sustainable fashion options so expensive? Okay. Why are the fashion sustainable fashion options so expensive? It's because paying, having a person working 8 hours with human salary, it puts a higher cost on the garment than when you have them working 16 hours at 30% of the salary. It is also much more expensive to grow crops without pesticides than with pesticides. When you don't have pesticides, pests happen, and a lot of the cotton dies. So you need a lot more cotton to have enough cotton for a t-shirt when you don't use pesticides, when you use pesticides. For example, another thing, if you use organic dyes, the fastening factor of the organic dye is much lesser than an artificial dye, which means that a lot of the fabric is not uneven and you cannot use it. And you maybe need a lot more of that. Or you need to have it dyeing for a much longer time, which then it's a lot more cost. Then when you're mass producing, when you're producing 20,000 pieces, in a factory knows that you're going to give them work for all of their workers for a month. So they're able to give you a much better price because they have less risk. If you're just producing 20, they need to do it one by one. They cannot do like a production chain kind of work, which is much more efficient. So it takes a lot more time. This is what I was saying with the sensitized consumer. We think that sustainable fashion is unrealistically expensive. What we are not realizing is high street fashion is unrealistically cheap. This is also why I'm saying to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because especially a small brand cannot afford to check all the boxes at the same time. You cannot do everything organic and then use only recycled materials. It's really difficult and it's very expensive, and it's expensive for a reason. It is very, very complicated. It's a very complicated issue. Last question. Will a buyer's role reduce because of the influx of digital retail analytics? Or will a buyer's gut instinct on a trend still be important in the near future? I think a buyer's role, I mean, you will not need less buyers, but hopefully buyers could have weekends now. Buyers, and I say this after working as a buyer, if you really care about your product, it's 24/7 job. I used to do my own analytics because the way I like my data analyzed, because that way it was different than I was having the analytics given by the merchandising team. So I was doing my analytics, I was doing the negotiations, I was working very closely with the designers, I was coordinating with the production, and then on the afternoons and in the weekends I was going to the store to see with my own eyes what people was having. I think hopefully it's just going to mean that it's going to make people's life easier and you're going to do your job better, because it's going to be more data driven and more reality driven than intuition. Intuition is just your subconscious brain working and connecting the dots on an easy way, so you don't have to I'm going to get into neurobiology now, but basically your brain takes most of your energy, and your brain has been very smart in designing ways that you can think without needing so much energy. So intuition is just your brain is connecting the dots on your back and the background so you can focus on other things. So this is, of course, going to be important because your intuition is going to connect what you're getting with the data. The data is showing you that today and yesterday, but tomorrow, God knows. There's no analytics thing that is going to tell you what are you going to sell until the pandemic, because we don't have behavioral models for that. We didn't have this data things back on 1920 with the Spanish flu. So you need definitely you need the gut. Okay, that's the last question. Yes, AI is very useful. It's useful. Useful doesn't mean it's going to do your job. It's a tool. You cannot write without a pen. Doesn't mean the pen is going to do the writing. Okay, that is all. Before closing, I want to just give you my details in case you have more questions, because I've already taken an hour and a half of your time. So you can write me an email if you want at adela@alonso / but the middle one, alonso.com. And you can find me as well in LinkedIn, Adela Alonso. I think my YouTube channel is in the same, it's got the same name, but maybe the easier is if you want to stay in touch with me through LinkedIn or through email, then that would be great. And I hope you learned something. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday and you stay safe and healthy and happy. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Adela.
Thank you. Should I get out now? I don't know.